This video is about Czechoslovakian heavy tanks in World of Tanks. So the heavy tanks come after the Skoda T25. They probably should have put the medium going across and the heavy as a branch down below, but they didn't do that. And you've got the VZ44-1, the 105-1000, the TNH TVZ51, and the VZ55. The 8, 9, and 10 are autoloaders. The 7 is not an autoloader. In order to unlock it, you're going to have to play the Skoda T25, or you're going to have to convert or use free experience. The vehicles are autoloaders. They're two-shot autoloaders. They're similar to the Italian heavy tanks. However, they're probably going to have better armor when you compare each one. If you look, for example, at this vehicle, this is a Tier 7 vehicle, the VZ44-1. What you're going to notice is that the penetration on the gun is actually pretty good. This means that this penetration is similar to many of the guns on Tier 8 heavy tanks. And this is a Tier 7 tank. So it's got a Tier 8 gun. It's a little bit below the average, but it's better than tanks like the IS-6 and maybe the KV-5. The armor is pretty good. It's got 200 on the front turret. And that 200 is very good for Tier 7. We're going to look at the hull armor. It's 110, 80, 60, which is actually pretty good also. But it does not have the autoloader. When you want to get the autoloader, you got to move into this next vehicle, which is a TNH 105-1000. And you have choices of two guns. For example, this one here is not an autoloader. It has 224 penetration. This one is an autoloader. It has two shells, also 224 penetration. So 224 is average penetration for Tier 8. Which means that the penetration of this vehicle is going to be similar to the penetration of other Tier 8 heavy tanks. And the gold rounds are pretty good. They're at 250. The turret armor and the hull armor is also pretty good. Nothing super special. You do have spaced armor, which is going to protect you against certain rounds that need to penetrate the spaced armor, such as a high explosive round. And then we move up to the Tier 9, which is the TNH TVZ51. We're going to look at the highest gun on this. It's at 252, which is typical for Tier 9. It starts with the Tier 8 gun. You get a 252, which is a regular gun, and you have a 252 autoloader gun. The 252 penetration is going to be similar to other Tier 9 heavy tanks, and it's going to be a little bit competitive with Tier 10 vehicles. Obviously, Tier 10, there are some vehicles that have very high penetration. But in general, with this Tier 9 vehicle, you should be fine penetration-wise against Tier 10. They're not that far apart. In terms of the armor, the turret armor is pretty good at 270. There's some vehicles like the Object 260, I believe it goes up to 350. But turret armor approaching 300 is about the most you're going to get for Tier 10. This is actually pretty good turret armor, and it would certainly be better than almost every Tier 8 tank. So then we're going to look at the final vehicle, which is this one right here. There's also two guns to choose from. One is a regular gun, and the other one is a two-shot autoloader. This is the VZ55. The penetration is at 260, which is typical for Tier 10 heavy tanks. So you're going to get penetration that is compatible. You notice that the turret armor is 300, which is also common with the better Tier 10 armored turrets. So you've got better armor than a lot of the heavy tanks. You see that the lower plate is only 115. That's actually not very good. So you got a weakness with the lower plate. So basically with these vehicles, you got the spaced armor, which is going to protect you against some rounds. And you have penetration that for all of the vehicles that is equal or similar to other vehicles for the same tier. You have the 2-shot autoloader. And you have a weak lower plate. So basically, is it an overpowered tank? It's not really an overpowered vehicle, but it is a well-designed vehicle. You should get good performance with it. And keep in mind that when Wargaming releases a new tech tree, they're a little bit buff. So what will happen is they'll let you play it for a while. They want the specs to be good so that you're going to play it. But then after a couple months go by, they're going to say, oh, this vehicle's overpowered. We need to nerf it a little bit. That's what they're going to do. And they will tell you, oh, it wasn't what we expected. No, I think that they know what they're doing. They know that they released them a little bit overpowered and that they're going to be nerfed later on. So we're going to compare it to the Italian tanks. You notice that the damage is the same with the Reno Charante. The penetration is 260 versus 268, which means it's also similar. The Reno Charante has 4-shot autoloader. The VZ55 is 2-shot autoloader, but you should be able to reload them in about the same time. It says 21 seconds, but then you have to add the time in between firing. It's going to kick it up to close to 51. The gun traverse speed is identical, and you'll see that the Reno Charante has weaker turret armor. However, it has a nice slope shape to it. And the Reno Charante has a better lower plate. Can't really compare the turret armor, and the view range is the same. We're going to look at the speed, which is 50 versus 40. You're always going to be comparing these two vehicles, and I'm going to tell you the primary difference. The Czechoslovakian heavy tanks have better turret armor, and in general, they're going to expect to have a little bit better armor. They're both going to have spaced armor. The penetration and the damage is probably going to be the same. The lower plate is probably going to be the same. The difference is going to be the turret armor seems to be stronger on the Czechoslovakian vehicles. So you do have a little bit of an advantage. Comparing this to the Italian tanks, I would say that the Italian tanks are probably better because they're auto reloaders, which means that when you run out of shells, you don't have to wait the total time. You don't have to reload all the shells, the whole clip, in order to fire again. This vehicle, you do have to. Okay, so these are the Swedish heavy tanks. There's a crew of 4. The way you check that is you go over here to your tech tree, and you can see that it starts out with a crew of 5, a crew of 4, a crew of 4, a crew of 4. You're going to go to your barracks. You're going to pick from any of your recruits, and I have been saving, I have been saving crew training manuals. See, I have 6 of them that I can add to my crew. So what's going to happen is the crew that I need to fill in, I have 2 ready to go. I need 3 from my barracks for that heavy tank. I'm going to use these 6 crew books to boost them up so that they have a lot of crew skills when I start out. You need around 100,000. You need 50,000 to get the tank, and then you need another 50 or 60 to get all the equipment. So you're going to need over 100,000 to fully equip the vehicle, and then you need another 60 to move up the next vehicle. I would say that of all the heavy tanks in the game, I think that they're not going to be overpowered heavy tanks, but they're not underpowered heavy tanks. Like, this is better than an IS-6. And I think you're going to have more fun playing this as opposed to an IS-6. You're probably going to see them in the frontline game mode. And I would say that it's either at the average compared to other vehicles, or it's a little bit above the average, but it's not an overpowered vehicle. So there's also a premium vehicle. Whenever they release a new tech tree, they usually have a premium vehicle. We're going to look at the heavy tanks, and we're going to look at the premium heavy tanks to see what's out there. If you want super heavy tanks, you can't go wrong with something like this, the Mauerbrecher, or the Mutant, the M6A2E1. If you want the autoloader, I would say try to get this one right here. The 703-122 is a lot of fun to play. It's got decent armor. The IS-3A is also a good vehicle with the auto reloader. If you like to play hull down, you might want to get a Somua SM or something similar. But other than that, I would say that these vehicles like the IS-6 and the 112 and the WZ, I don't think these are going to be high up on the list. I would rather get the Czechoslovakian tank than go with one of these. So, in terms of which one's the best tank, I would say 7032 IS-3A, the Mutant, the VK-168. I like the E75 TS. I strongly recommend this. It is a popular tank. The Defender used to be an overpowered tank. Now, not so much because there's a lot of competition. But other than that, if you want an autoloader, try to get the 3A or the 7032. The premium vehicle, I don't know if it's an autoloader or not. It's not listed in the tech tree, but it might end up appearing over here on the next release or in the shop. Or maybe it's part of the Mission Marathon because that vehicle hasn't been announced yet. Okay, that's my opinion of the Czechoslovakia heavy tanks. If you have any questions or comments, please post below. Hey, hey, hey!